We have a special guest with us today. I'll tell it this way. Once upon a time, there was a member of this very church that the city considered a successful businessman and esteemed member of the community who, from his lofty position, took the role of a servant, and not just any servant, but the role, yea, verily, of a junior high Sunday school teacher. Week after week, he descended into that lion's den of often sullen and smart-aleck young people with raging hormones and a bizarre communal sense of humor, and tried to introduce them to a biblical worldview when he wasn't talking about football. But it was a selfless act of in a harrowing environment, and this man soldiered on. One Sunday in particular, while he was teaching, a large bug crawled out into the floor between him and his students, inciting panic in the class, screams and fleeing bodies, and two of the students reached into their Sunday blazers and pulled out cap guns and unloaded their entire stockpile of imaginary ammunition into the completely unknowing insect until someone bravely stepped on the bug, causing the entire Sunday school experience to descend into utter chaos. But here's the miracle. That teacher came back. He returned week after week to do his duty. And I'm here to testify that that man was Jim Morgan. And my testimony is true because I'm one of the kids with the cap guns. But I have repented of my former life. Thanks in no small part to Jim's good example. Others will tell you that his greatness lies in his many great accomplishments. You can read about those. But to me, it will always lie in his understanding that there is no Christianity without humility, and no leadership that is not servant leadership. Welcome, Jim. We will hear you gladly when the time comes, and thank you for coming.
What a gift. Kyle, thanks for sharing that. Brought back a lot of memories. Listening to your music for many years. So. I am in wonderment being here. I talked to Peggy coming here that there would be a lot of emotion. I've already seen a lot of friends. It's interesting that first person that walked across, Cal, I go back a long way with his mother. And then there was a Wiley at the end, and Wiley's been part of my life in Greenville and in Charlotte for more years than I can count. So it's special. For those of you who don't know my background, I was born in this church, baptized at the age of 8 in this church. And when I say this church, the building was different. I think they called it Downtown Baptist for a number of years, but it was a downtown structure called First Baptist. I went on one church retreat only as a youth. I'm not proud of that, but that's the only one I went on. I will have to admit, and I apologize to the children because they've already given you the best 10 pieces of advice that you could possibly get, but I did speak to a stranger on that retreat. 5 years later, I married that stranger, and 45 years later, we're here today. So those of you who go on youth retreats, I just want to warn you that it may have deeper repercussions than you might think when you first go. That's one of those what's next questions. For the graduates, I do want to say I've done something that to try to get you on my side. So when you go to luncheon, we'll not only have some Krispy Kreme donuts, but we've got some ball caps that we customized for you. I tell you that now, not to set you up, but I figure if I can get you on my side a little bit with bribery, even in a church, it's probably not a bad thing to try. So you will be bribed in your luncheon afterwards by me. I'm excited to be here with you and your families and your friends and this congregation. It's a special place. Peggy and I were married at First Baptist, came straight back here, got seen after 3 years in the Navy, got seen by a friend of my parents the first Sunday we were back, drafted into teaching, and the memories from that point forward are beyond anything that I can describe. I will tell you that our friend Kyle Matthews saved himself a lot of agony. I had no idea that was going to be the introduction, because that was also going to be my introduction. However, I was going to tell my version of it. My version is, and this part happens to be true, Kyle kind of made it seem like that, middle school, that's pretty forgivable. That actually happened in his 12th grade year. So Let there be no mistake about it. I had prepared a deeply serious and theological lesson that day, and I was just coming up to the critical moment, and that big bug, as he called it, came crawling across. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I said, "Oh, don't let the students see it." And sure enough, I mean, I'm telling you, Billy the Kid and Wyatt Earp would have been proud of the draw that he and his friend put on it. Now, if you had asked me at that point in time, what's next for those two young men, I would have said, well, I don't know. After reform school, I'm not sure, you know. But if you had told me that one of them would be on the ministerial staff in Greensboro, North Carolina, where's Booty? Is Booty around? It's got the same last name as Booty. He happens to be a Stephen conference, so if Jeanette and John are here, they've got a couple of ministers in their crowd, but there he is as a minister, and then Kyle ends up as a minister at First Baptist Church. So I think I share that because there are a couple of good lessons in there. One, it's clear that we truly do have a forgiving God. And secondly, it's clear that he can use anyone in his plan. On to what is next. Let me just tell you, for both you, the high school and college graduates, when I sat in your seat, I really did think I knew what was next. As a high school graduate, I was heading off to college, school called Vanderbilt. I was going to graduate. I was going to major in business. I was going to go into finance or business in some form and do that for the rest of my life in Greenville, South Carolina. That was home. I got to Vanderbilt. It was Vietnam time, so I was going to be drafted. I had a low draft number. Decided that I'd rather be in the Navy. I entered Naval ROTC, so I had 3 years in the Navy following Vanderbilt, not a straight trip back to go to work or to go to grad school. The other interesting thing is that because of that, I would have never thought I'd be married before I graduated. Peggy and I got married the summer before our senior year because I was going to be going into the Navy. We had no idea where we'd go, so I was married and didn't expect that. Came back to Greenville, got into finance, but ended up moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, now to Winston. And somehow through all this, my commitment to this financial career, I've gone from dollars to donuts. So my point being, I only thought I knew what was next, but I didn't. And what he had in mind for me as being next was so much more wonderful than what I had planned for myself. So the answer for what is next, I'm going to answer the sermon title first, is we really have no idea. It's fun to think about it. It's fun to plan on it, but we have truly no idea. Jeremiah 29:11, which was part of your scripture, is the most comforting part that you can take, recognizing you don't know what's next for you, and that is that he knows the plans he has for you, and he declares that they will prosper you, and they will not harm you, and they are plans for a bright hope and a wonderful future. And I am living testimony that that's the case, if you'll just let go to him. So as you leave here today, and some of you be going for further education, some of you going into the beginning of careers, and as you ponder what's next for you, I decided that I, like the children, although I'm not sure mine are as good, would leave you with a few thoughts. So I have 5 thoughts or maybe challenges, but things I want you to carry with you. I've learned these over my years. They've been very valuable to me. And I also hope for those else in the congregation that there'll be some meaning and some value to each of you in some of these too. So in no particular order, other than the last one, here are the 5. Whatever you think you're going to do with your life, I urge you to make sure that you're pursuing something that is a passion in your life. A passion in your life. 1 Peter 4:10 says that each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. The first part I love. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received. He's making it clear you have received a gift. So those passions that he's put in you are because they tie into your gift. And you need to take those passions and do what you want to do with your life. Do it for him, but do what you want to do with your life. I will tell you that if you don't do that, this is my belief, and I didn't for a while, you're either pursuing someone else's dream or you're pursuing someone else's dream for you. So pursue a passion and make a difference in someone's life. It is very important to remember, I think, that The joy that we get from doing that. Let's say that you thought you were supposed to pursue fame, fortune, some tangible result. I will tell you, if you're passionate about what you're doing, then one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to, because you're so good at what you're doing, going to achieve that fame, fortune, or whatever you thought you wanted, or you're not going to, and it's just not going to matter. So it's going to be a win-win. Second thought, understand the true meaning of success. Please strive for the true meaning of success. Success is not measured by what you do. Success is measured by who you are. Not what you do, but who you are. I served in the Navy after Vanderbilt. And during that Navy time, I was on board the same ship for 3 years. And I had 2 captains. And anyone that understands the military, when you're at sea, and I was at sea the whole time, the captain of that ship is the king. I mean, it is the critical role, and you are at his beck and call, at his mercy, and you're under him in every way. 3 years, I reported to both the captains directly. First captain was an Annapolis graduate, 6'2", erect, and he was what we call striking for admiral. The next rank in the Navy after captain is admiral. He wanted to be an admiral, and it was clear, and everything he did was geared toward his success. He made life on that ship miserable for 500 people for a year and a half. Miserable. As a lower junior officer, I was a Lieutenant JG at the time. I did all I could to buffer that, but you can only do so much. Then we have a change of command, which is a big thing in the Navy. New captain comes on. I got retoured on the ship, so I'm going to be staying with him for a year and a half. His name was Captain Mallard. Captain Mallard comes on board, and the best way I can describe Captain Mallard, for those of you who know what this means, he was Columbo in a naval uniform, okay? Just think about it. Smart as a whip, but so disheveled looking, so unmilitary. And he told us in our very first meeting together, he said, I'm in this man's Navy, as he called it, for one reason, because I love it. He had pursued a passion. He loved it. And he said, I've already been passed over for admiral. I will never be admiral. I will never be resent to Washington, D.C. to make my name. And he said, and I'm very content with that. He said, let's just have a good time and let's make this ship the most efficient ship in the Navy. The difference in that next year and a half of life on that ship was night and day. People worked harder than ever before for him, but they loved it more than ever before. He had a kindness and a gentleness, in spite of the firmness that was required of a captain, that just changed our lives. I've looked back on it, and I think the difference is that my first captain, Captain Snowden, he spent his life building a resume. Captain Mallard spent all that time building a life. Don't get caught up in building a resume. Build a life. I think there's a big difference. You know, I go to 2 Timothy 4:7. This is sort of Paul's epitaph. We think this is the last letter he wrote. He's in prison. Times are tough. He feels things drawing to a close, and he says, listen to this. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now, the thing I want to point out here is he didn't say I have won the fight. He didn't say I have won the race, but he has kept the faith. And it was joy in those words. That's what we're here to do. We're here to fight a good fight and to finish the race, and through it all, keep the faith. Third thought. This is what I'm called very simply, make the call. Make the call is simple. You'll know now, and you'll know as you go through your life, there are people who have changed your life, who have affected you, who have mentored you, who have taught you. They'll come back to you, and you'll realize more and more what they mean to you. And by the way, at the top of this list for many of us is our parents. When you feel that, when you sense that, when something happens in your life where you know you're grateful for someone, for what they did in your life, make the call. Stop, call them, text them, whatever communication, but personalize as much as you can. If it's for nothing else than to say the words thank you. Not on their birthday, not on Christmas, not on Mother's Day, not on Father's Day, not on Friends Day, out of the blue. Say, I was thinking of you today, and I don't know that I've ever told you what you meant to me. So make the call. As it relates to parents on that, let me just remind you of something that it took me a long time to figure out. When Moses came down the mountain with the 10 Commandments, the fifth one said, honor your father and your mother. Interesting, the first four are all about our relationship with the Lord. The fifth commandment is the first one that has anything to do with our earthly life among each other. And very first one that the Lord provided within those six is honor your father and your mother. Doesn't say honor them until you're 18, or until you're 21, or until you're 25, until you're on your own, or until you're married, or until you have 7 children, or only when they're nice to you. It says honor them. And I'm telling you, make that call. Make that call. And it's not just parents, it's friends. This is very, we'll work on this one, Peggy. This is very close to me right now. And the reason is, when Peggy and I were here teaching, and we taught, after we moved up to high school seniors, taught for a pretty good while with the seniors. What they didn't know was going on in our life was that I was doing miserably in my career. And I'd bought a house too big, and cars too nice, and I just adopted 2 children, and all of a sudden my income was going to 0, and my debts were still there. I was praying, but I didn't understand to really let go to him. Got a phone call one day from a friend a few years older than I am. And he said, Jim, he said, I don't know whether y'all have ever, he said, no, he said, I'd heard that y'all might be putting your house up for sale. I said, yeah. He said, listen, I don't know where you're going, but I've got a few extra houses in inventory. He was a builder. And he said, I've got one that I'm really a little worried about, and I'd hate to leave it empty. Is there any chance that y'all could house sit for me? Is there any chance you could house sit for me for free? I knew what he was doing. I knew that he knew that we were financially in trouble, but he wasn't going to destroy my pride. He was saying, would you do me a favor and move into this house for free? And we did. And we did, on Cleveland Street Extension. And we lived there for a couple of years, I think, if I remember right. And I was able to take care of my wife and my children until we transitioned and got things back in tow. We were friends with that person from that point forward. Well, we'd been friends up to that point. He was really closer to my older sister's age, who's here today. And I never told him I knew what he was doing. I just couldn't bring myself to swallow my pride and say, thank you for what you did. I know why you did that for us, and it wasn't to do you a favor. 2 months ago, and this is 30 years later, 2 months ago I was at a gathering with him. It was at a relatively public place. We ended up in a corner kind of together. I was seeing he and his wife. We don't see each other very often because I'm not living in Winston-Salem. And for whatever reason, I can't tell you why, it got kind of quiet around us, and it was just us standing there. And I looked at his wife, and I looked at him, and I said, Gil, I've got to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. I don't know how many people you have affected the way you affected my family those many years ago, but my guess is it's hundreds. But let me tell you from my point of view, you changed our life. You gave us something greater than that house and greater than free rent. You allowed us to stay together and keep some sense of pride without it being false pride, and cared for us, and you took nothing in return, including no acclaim and no thanks. And I'm thanking you now, 30 years overdue, I'm thanking you now for what you did. You blessed my life, and I'm grateful. This past Monday, Gil was killed in a terrible plane crash. I'll be going to his funeral this afternoon. Last night, when I went to see his wife, Perry, we hugged at the door. We cried. And she looked at me and she said, I treasure that last time we had together. And you'll never know what you're sharing that with Gil meant to him. He had basically forgotten it. Make the call. When you've got something to say to someone, don't wait 30 years like I did. Because if I had waited 30 years and 2 months, I would never have shared with him what I needed to share with him. And instead of praising the Lord that he guided me to that 2 months ago, I would have a hurt way beyond. I'd be adding to the loss of my friend with my hurt. Make the call. Last, fourth one, and this will be quick, and that is this. Whenever you hit an end, whenever you hit a less than desirable ending, just literally see that as an opportunity for a brand new beginning. I won't go into details, but I have failed flat on my face. I hit a brick wall with barbed wire around it, poison ivy. There was nowhere to go. I couldn't take the path I wanted to take. I had to find another path. God led me on the other path, and my life has been more joyous in every way that matters with him because I listened and took his path. I was forced into it, but it looked like an end. It was a beginning. And there's an old saying that I'm going to leave you with on this one, and that is, a bend in the road is only the end of the road if you fail to make the turn. A bend in the road is only the end of the road if you fail to make the turn, if you keep going the direction you were going instead of following his guidance. So remember that. Approach that ending as a beginning. The last one I've got is this. Do all you do within his will and according to his plan for you, going back to Jeremiah. Colossians 3:17 says, and whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. I know that sounds simple, but I promise you it's not. I mean, I was raised in this church. Matter of fact, I hate to admit it, but my parents made us sit in the front row growing up. I mean, the front pew, right, the equivalent of right there. I mean, the senior minister that preached to me saw me nodding off every Sunday morning because we came to the early service and I was asleep. You know, that was the beginning of my walk. And I did not take my faith with me in the early part of my career. I thought I was supposed to check it at the doorstep. I'm telling you, there's nowhere, biblically or otherwise, that says we're supposed to have our faith on Sundays and maybe other appropriate family and Christian times. You've got to take it in every door you enter. And the difference in my life today upon realizing that and what I did during the first X years of my career is night and day. When I was asked to come join Krispy Kreme in this new role, it was a disastrous situation. It's a public company. The stock was about $1 a share. It had been literally up at 50. The world said it was going bankrupt. It could go on and on and on. And the only thing we did, the only thing that I did that's really been right, because others have done it all, but I said, the Lord's coming in the front door. He's not going to be left on the doorstep. We're not going to sneak him in the back door. He's coming in the front door. And their mission at that point in time was to sell more donuts. And I told them, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. So we changed our mission statement. And our mission statement is very simple. It's to touch and enhance lives through the joy that is Krispy Kreme. That's our mission statement for our corporate. Nothing to do with stock price, return on income, any of the matrices. It's simply to touch and enhance lives through the joy that is Krispy Kreme. My personal mission statement came from that. I just changed the last two words. To touch and enhance lives through the joy that is Jesus Christ. Do it all for his glory and all for him. I promise you, it will never get in the way of your career. It will never hinder what you want to do with your life. But it will absolutely reward your life in ways you can't imagine. So that's what we do. You pursue your passion. You understand the true definition of success. You make the call. You don't give up when you hit a dead end. You take another alternative, and you do all this for him. I urge you to do all that, and as I leave, I'll give you one more thought. And this is a thought that was shared with me months ago, and I wish it had been shared with me years ago, and I'm probably going to close every talk I ever make with this, because it's been so valuable to me. When every one of us go out this door today, particularly when we get up tomorrow morning, we're going to be so doggone busy. I mean, time is the most precious thing we have, and there's just never enough of it. And it's going to be true for you graduates. It really is going to be true for you graduates, and you just won't believe how that's going to inundate you. So as you go out in this busy world, as every one of us get out in this busy world, I ask us all to remember two things. Every single morning when you wake up, think about these two things. Walk more slowly and bow more often. Walk more slowly with him and bow more often to him. And I assure you, although we don't know what's next will be wonderful. And we're excited for you and with you. To God be the glory. Thank you.